Commander Han Wu walked slowly through the long glass hallway that led to the giant meeting room of the Galactic Council. His black uniform was clean and pressed, but his hands were shaking just a little. He had served Earth for 20 years and fought in 6 different wars for the Federation. Now he was about to watch everything fall apart. The meeting room was huge, like a football stadium, but made of crystal that sparkled with different colors. Hundreds of alien beings sat in floating chairs that moved around the room. The spider creatures called arachnids clicked their sharp legs on metal surfaces. Their leader was twice as tall as Han Wu, with 8 red eyes that never blinked. The crystal beings called quartz made soft musical sounds when they talked to each other. They looked like living diamonds, but Han Wu knew they were harder than any human heart. The gas creatures called nebula floated in special containers that kept their cloudy bodies together. They changed colors when they were angry, and right now they were all turning dark red. Lieutenant Jeannie stood beside Han Wu, looking around the room with sharp eyes. She was young but very smart, and had warned him this day would come. Her family had been soldiers for generations, and she could smell trouble like a hunting dog. She whispered to Han Wu without moving her lips much. The other species have been planning this for months. Sir, our spy networks picked up secret meetings and coded messages. They want to take our colonies and divide them up like pieces of cake. Han Wu nodded slowly. He had suspected something was wrong when Earth stopped getting invited to important military meetings. The Federation had been treating humans differently for the past year, always asking them to do the dangerous missions but never including them in planning meetings. It was like being the strong friend who only got called when someone needed help moving furniture. The arachnid chancellor stood up on his long legs and the room became quiet. His voice was like metal scraping against stone when he spoke. The human species has become a problem for our peaceful galaxy. They are too violent, too quick to fight, and too clever with weapons. Their military inventions upset the balance we have worked to keep for 1,000 years. The other aliens made sounds of agreement. The quartz beings sang a harmony that meant yes, while the nebula entities swirled in patterns that showed they supported the decision. Han Wu felt his stomach drop like he was falling off a cliff. Earth had given everything to the Federation. Human soldiers had died on worlds they could not even pronounce. Human scientists had shared their best discoveries. Human workers had built space stations and mines that made other species rich. Now those same species were acting like humans were the problem. Ginny moved closer to him and spoke very quietly. Sir, I just got a message from our hidden communication network. Fleet movements are already starting toward our outer colonies. This is not just about making us leave. They plan to attack us the moment we are declared enemies of the Federation. They think we will be too shocked and scattered to fight back properly. The Chancellor continued his speech, listing all the reasons why humans were dangerous. He talked about human weapons that could destroy planets. He mentioned human tactics that had won battles other species thought were impossible to win. He described human technology that grew faster than any other species could match. But what made Han Wu angry was that everything the Chancellor said was true. Humans were good at war, and they did create powerful weapons. The difference was that humans had always used these abilities to protect the Federation, not threaten it. President Nari appeared on a large screen from Earth. Her face was calm, but Han Wu could see the fire in her eyes that meant she was planning something. The president had grown up poor and worked her way to the top through pure determination. She was not the kind of person who gave up easily. The council vote is already decided, she said to Han Wu through their private channel. They will announce it in a few minutes. We have 7 days to evacuate all our people from Federation space. Any human found in their territory after that will be killed on sight. Han Wu watched as the vote was called. Each species had to announce their decision out loud. The arachnids voted to exile humans. The quartz beings sang their agreement. The nebula entities formed the shape that meant banishment. Even species that humans had saved in past wars voted against them. Only 3 small species voted to let humans stay, and their votes did not matter. The final count was not even close. The Chancellor announced the decision with what sounded like happiness in his voice. All human colony stations and ships must leave Federation space within 7 standard days. Any human presence after this deadline will be considered an act of war and will be met with immediate military response. The territories currently held by humans will be redistributed among Federation members to ensure proper management and development. Jine showed Hanwu a small device that displayed a map of human space. Already alien fleets were moving toward human worlds. The arachnids were heading for the mining colonies near Proxima Centauri. The quartz beings had ships aimed at the research stations in the Vega system. The nebula entities were surrounding the agricultural worlds that fed half the Federation. It was clear this had been planned for months, while humans were still fighting Federation wars and believing they were part of the family, as Hanwu left the council chambers. He felt something cold and hard settle in his chest like a piece of metal. It was not fear or sadness. It was determination. The other species thought they were getting rid of a problem, but they were actually creating something much worse. They were taking humans who had been loyal friends and turning them into enemies. They were giving humans a reason to use all those weapons and tactics and technologies for themselves instead of for the Federation. President Nari was already addressing Earth when Hanwu reached his ship. Her speech was broadcast to every human colony and station in space. They believe that cutting us off from their trade routes and technology will make us weak and desperate, she said with steel in her voice. They think exile will break our spirit and force us to beg for mercy. They have forgotten something important about humans. We are most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose. The evacuation began immediately. Massive transport ships launched from Earth carrying millions of people and everything valuable they could grab. Human colonies across the galaxy started packing up their most important equipment and research data. But Hanwu noticed something interesting. Several deep space research stations went dark and stopped responding to communications. A small fleet of Earth's most advanced warships disappeared from their bases, and their crews' families received messages saying they were going on a secret mission. As Hanwu ship jumped to hyperspace for the last time, he looked back at the council station. The aliens inside were probably celebrating and planning how to divide up human territory. But they had made one big mistake. They thought exile meant the end of the human story. In reality, it was just the beginning of a much bigger and more dangerous chapter. When it was over, Admiral Sumin broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. The Sask Empire has been dissolved. Their military has been disbanded. Their people are free to choose their own future. Any attempt to reconstitute the hegemony will be met with immediate and final response. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as human ships patrolled the former Sask territory. These were the same humans the Federation had dismissed as too dangerous to command. Now they had accomplished the most efficient military victory in recorded history. The Federation delegation that had negotiated with the humans realized they had witnessed something unprecedented. They had seen what Deathworlders could accomplish when they stopped restraining themselves for the comfort of more civilized species. The day humans stopped playing fair became the day the galaxy learned what they had actually been capable of all. Along for 50 years, humans had chosen to be gentle and diplomatic and restrained. They had protected other species while hiding their true potential. Now every species in the galaxy understood that human restraint had been a gift, not a weakness. The Federation had rejected that gift and learned to regret their choice. The lesson would be remembered with either gratitude or terror by every species for generations to come. The age of human deference to alien authority was over. The age of human independence had begun. Captain Young-Ho guided his black stealth ship through the floating rocks of the Kepler 442 system, like a fish swimming through coral. 3 years had passed since the Great Exile, and everything had changed in ways the Galactic Council never expected. The ship was so quiet that even the best alien sensors could not detect it. Human technology had grown fast without Federation rules holding it back. His communication officer, Ensign Da-Yun, turned from her screen with excitement in her voice. "Sir, I have reports from all our hidden colonies. The Aurora Mining Group has found valuable metals on 4 different worlds, and they are already building factories. The Horizon Exploration Fleet made contact with 3 new alien species who want to be our friends instead of our masters. All the independent colonies are asking to join our alliance." Young-ho smiled as he read the reports. What looked like a disaster 3 years ago was turning into the best thing that ever happened to humanity. The Galactic Council had rules about everything: where humans could build colonies, what technology they could develop, how fast they could expand, even what kind of weapons they could make for self-defense. Out here in the wild space beyond Federation borders, humans could do whatever they wanted. The genius of the human plan was becoming clear to everyone involved. While the Council aliens thought they had thrown humans into empty space to slowly die, humans had actually been freed from prison. The Federation had always treated the Outer Rim like a wasteland full of worthless worlds and dangerous creatures. They never bothered to explore properly or try to make friends with the independent species who lived there. Dr. Kyung-mi was the smartest person Young-ho had ever met. She ran the secret research program called Prometheus from a huge ship disguised as a broken space hulk. The ship looked like junk from outside, but inside it had laboratories that could create miracles. Her latest report made Young-ho whistle with amazement. "The alien technology we stole and improved is already much better than anything the Council has," she explained over their secure video link. "But the real breakthrough is that we learned to think in completely new ways. While they spent centuries making tiny improvements to old ideas, we have been inventing things that never existed before." The key to human success was risk-taking, something the Council species had forgotten how to do. Aliens avoided star systems with unstable suns, dangerous asteroid fields, or poisonous atmospheres. They called these places death traps and marked them as forbidden zones, but humans saw opportunities where others saw only danger. They built solar power, collectors around dying stars that gave them unlimited energy. They established mining operations inside asteroid belts that were full of rare metals. They created underground cities on worlds with toxic air that became manufacturing centers. Young-ho remembered his first meeting with the Saurian clans 6 months after exile. The reptile people were tall and covered in green scales with golden eyes that missed nothing. They had been ignored by the Council for generations because their worlds were considered too hot and too dangerous. The Saurians were masters of biological technology. They could grow ships from living materials that healed themselves after battle damage. They could create medicines that cured diseases other species thought were impossible to treat. The Saurian chief named Raxtor had been suspicious at first. "Why should we trust humans?" he had asked through his translator device. "The Council species have promised us many things over the centuries, but they always break their promises when it suits them." Young-ho had been honest about human intentions. "We are not here to rule you or take your resources. We want to be partners. We will share our technology if you share yours. We will fight beside you if enemies attack. We will treat you as equals, not as servants." The proof had come when Saurian colonies were attacked by space pirates. The Council had ignored their calls for help, saying it was not worth sending military ships to such a remote area. But human warships had arrived within days and destroyed the pirate fleets completely. Then human engineers had helped rebuild the damaged Saurian cities using a combination of human manufacturing and Saurian biological techniques. The result was settlements that were stronger and more beautiful than anything either species could have built alone. The insectoid hive clusters had been an even bigger surprise. These aliens looked like giant ants, but with 6 arms and the ability to think as one group. Individual insects were not very smart, but when they worked together, they became incredibly intelligent. They had developed swarm robotics that could build massive structures in days and organic computers that grew like plants, but calculated faster than any machine. Commander So-jin had made first contact with the hive clusters after discovering that they communicated through chemical signals. The human translation computers had taken weeks to figure out their language, but once communication was established, the insects had been eager to trade. The Council had always been afraid of hive mind species, thinking they were planning to take over the galaxy. But humans found them to be honest and reliable partners who kept their promises and shared their knowledge freely. The independent species of the Outer Rim had one thing in common: they had all been abandoned or oppressed by the Galactic Council. The Council only cared about species that had valuable resources or strategic locations. Everyone else was left to struggle alone against pirates, raiders, and natural disasters. When humans arrived offering fair trade agreements, advanced medical supplies, and mutual defense treaties. These species eagerly joined what was becoming known as the Terran Alliance. Young-ho received daily reports that showed the alliance growing stronger every week. New colonies were being established on worlds the Council had never bothered to explore. Human shipyards were building vessels that combined the best technology from all member species, saurian bioships with human weapon systems, hive cluster swarm fighters controlled by human artificial intelligence, hybrid designs that were more powerful than anything any single species could create. The most important change was not technological but social. The Galactic Council was built on hierarchy, with some species ruling others and everyone knowing their place. The Terran Alliance was built on cooperation, with all species contributing their strengths and sharing in the benefits. A saurian scientist could work alongside a human engineer and a hive cluster mathematician to solve problems none of them could handle. Alone, Dr. Kyung-mi sent Young-ho a final report that made him laugh out loud. "The Council species are becoming worried about losing trade revenue," she wrote. "Several independent worlds have stopped buying Council goods because Alliance products are better and cheaper. Some Council member species are secretly asking about joining our alliance. The exile that was supposed to destroy us is actually making us stronger, while making them weaker." Young-ho looked at the star charts showing Alliance territory. It now covered more than 200 star systems and was growing every day. What had started as a desperate escape was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. A truly cooperative civilization where species worked together instead of competing against each other. The Council had tried to exile humanity from their story, but humans were writing a much better story of their own. Admiral Taejun stood on the command bridge of the massive warship Indomitable, watching the newest addition to humanity fleet complete its first test flight. 5 years had passed since the exile, and the Terran Alliance now controlled over 300 star systems. The ship before him was longer than 10 city blocks and bristled with weapons that could crack planets in half. What made this achievement even more amazing was that most of these star systems had been considered worthless junk by the Galactic Council status report he commanded, and his tactical officer, Commander So-jin, stepped forward with a glowing tablet that showed fleet numbers. "We now have 60 dreadnoughts, 400 cruisers, and over 3,000 smaller vessels across all ship types," she announced with pride. "But the real game changer is our new manufacturing capability." She pointed toward the main screen where massive ring-shaped factories floated around a brown dwarf star, using its energy to power automated construction systems that could build a cruiser in 3 days instead of 3 months. The secret to humanity's rapid expansion was their willingness to take risks that Council species would never even consider. While aliens avoided star systems with unstable suns, dangerous asteroid fields, or hostile environments, humans saw golden opportunities. They built solar energy collectors around dying stars that gave them more power than entire Council worlds. They established mining operations in the hearts of asteroid belts where the most valuable metals were hidden. They created underground cities on worlds with poisonous atmospheres that became massive manufacturing centers. Engineer Wonbin had changed everything with his breakthrough in tiny robot technology that could build anything from basic materials. "We do not need the rare, expensive materials that Council technology depends on," he explained during the Alliance leadership meeting. "Our nanoassemblers can literally construct complex machinery from simple elements found on any rocky planet. Iron, silicon, carbon, and hydrogen can be transformed into anything we need: computer chips, weapons, engines, or even food." This technology allowed human colonies to become completely self-sufficient within months instead of decades. But the true strength of the Terran Alliance was not in their ships or weapons, but in their unity and ability to adapt. Unlike the Galactic Council, where each species kept separate military forces and jealously protected their technology secrets, the Alliance encouraged complete cooperation. And sharing human pilots flew saurian bioships that could heal battle damage by growing new armor plating. Saurian warriors used human-designed, powered suits that made them twice as strong and fast. Hive cluster swarm fighters were controlled by human artificial intelligence that could coordinate millions of tiny ships like a deadly dance. The combination of human innovation, saurian, biological, Mastery and hive cluster collective intelligence created military capabilities that no single species could match. A typical Alliance battle group included human dreadnoughts with impossible firepower, Saurian biocruisers that could repair themselves during combat, and clouds of hive cluster fighters that moved like flocks of metal birds. Each ship type covered the weaknesses of the others, creating a military force that was nearly unstoppable. Admiral Tai Jun walked through the Alliance capital, city on New Terra, marveling at how different it was from anything in Council space. The buildings were a mixture of human engineering, Saurian organic architecture, and hive cluster geometric patterns. Streets were filled with beings from dozens of different species, all working together toward common goals. Children from different species played together in parks, while their parents conducted business in multiple languages that translation devices made understandable. The intelligence reports coming in from Council space were becoming more interesting every week. Council military forces were gradually getting weaker as member species became lazy and comfortable. Their technology had barely improved in decades because they were afraid that new inventions might upset the balance of power. Meanwhile, several Council worlds were experiencing internal problems as their populations began demanding the freedoms and opportunities they saw in Alliance territory. Captain Boram commanded a stealth ship that regularly slipped into Council space to gather information. Her latest report made Admiral Tai Jun smile with grim satisfaction. "The Council species are starting to panic," she wrote. "3 more independent worlds have declared their intention to join our alliance. The Aquarian republics are secretly negotiating to switch sides because they are tired of being treated like second-class citizens. Even some court settlements are asking for alliance protection, because our trade agreements are so much better than Council exploitation." The proof of alliance superiority was becoming obvious to everyone who cared to look. Alliance worlds were prosperous and growing, while Council worlds were stagnating. Alliance technology was advancing rapidly, while Council science moved at the speed of committee meetings. Alliance military forces were eager and well-trained, while Council armies were soft from years of easy living. Dr. Kyungmi's latest research breakthrough would cement the Alliance position as the dominant power in their region of the galaxy. Project Genesis allows us to transform dead worlds into garden planets in decades rather than centuries. She explained to the Alliance Leadership Council, "We can create space habitats larger than natural planets and establish permanent settlements in environments that were previously impossible to survive." The technology represented everything the Alliance had become: bold, innovative, and completely beyond what the old Council thought was achievable. But perhaps the most significant advantage was philosophical rather than technological. The Terran Alliance operated on principles of cooperation, merit-based advancement, and shared prosperity that were completely foreign to the Council hierarchical system. Species that had been oppressed and ignored for centuries found themselves elevated to positions of leadership based on their abilities rather than their political connections or military strength. Young, alien graduates from Alliance universities were returning to their homeworlds in Council space, bringing with them ideas about democracy, equality, and scientific freedom. These ideas spread like wildfire among populations that had never been given the chance to reach their full potential. Council leaders were finding it increasingly difficult to maintain control when their people could see a better way of life just beyond their borders. Admiral Tai Jun received the final intelligence report he had been waiting for with satisfaction. Council military exercises were showing serious weaknesses in their command structure, equipment, maintenance, and soldier morale. Meanwhile, Alliance forces were conducting joint training operations that demonstrated capabilities the Council had never imagined possible. The time for humanity return to their former territory was approaching faster than anyone had expected. The storm that had been building in the darkness beyond Council borders was finally ready to break, and when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. The species that had exiled humanity thinking they were removing a threat were about to discover they had created something far more dangerous than they ever feared. The final confrontation took place not in the cold vacuum of space, but in the same crystal dome chambers where humanity had been sentenced to exile. 8 years earlier, Admiral Tai Jun walked slowly through the great hall where dozens of alien species had once voted to cast humans into the void. Now the same chamber was filled with representatives from over 200 worlds, all requesting to join the Terran Alliance. The irony was so perfect that several human officers had to struggle not to smile. Former President Nari, now holding the title of Supreme Chancellor of the Alliance, stood before the remnants of the old Galactic Council with quiet dignity rather than triumph. "You taught us valuable lessons about survival," she said, in a voice that carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "You showed us that the universe rewards strength, adaptability, and the willingness to embrace change. You also demonstrated that those who cling to outdated systems and refuse to evolve will eventually be replaced by those who dare to grow." The lesson had been learned well, but not by the species who thought they were teaching it. The arachnid species, once the dominant military power controlling hundreds of star systems, had been reduced to governing barely 30 worlds. Their rigid hierarchical structure and complete unwillingness to adapt new ideas had left them vulnerable to alliance tactics that emphasized flexibility, creativity, and rapid innovation. Chancellor Vexitar, 8 legs trembling with age and defeat, transmitted his final message to the galaxy. "We underestimated not just human resilience but human ability to inspire others to become better than they ever believed possible." The transformation of galactic civilization was visible everywhere. Admiral Tejun looked. Former council worlds that had been gray industrial wastelands were now green and alive with carefully planned cities that blended the architectural styles of multiple species. Children, who had never seen aliens before the Alliance arrived, now played together in parks where humans taught Saurian youngsters to build with metal tools, while hive cluster larvae showed human kids how to think in mathematical patterns. Engineer Wonbin, now serving as Director of Technological Development for the entire Alliance, unveiled the latest breakthrough that would cement humanity's position as the driving force behind galactic progress. "Project Genesis has evolved beyond our wildest dreams," he announced to the gathered representatives. "We can now terraform dead worlds in decades rather than centuries, create space habitats larger than natural planets, and establish permanent settlements in environments that were previously impossible to survive." The technology represented everything the Alliance had become: bold, innovative, and utterly beyond what the old Council had thought achievable. But the most significant transformation was not technological or military, but philosophical. The Terran Alliance operated on completely revolutionary principles of cooperation, merit-based advancement, and shared prosperity that were utterly foreign to the Council-old hierarchical system. Species that had been oppressed and ignored for centuries found themselves elevated to positions of real leadership based on their abilities and contributions rather than their political connections or military power. A young Aquarian scientist named Reef Singer had been promoted to head the Alliance Biological Research Division despite being only 25 years old. In the old Council system, she would have spent decades in menial positions waiting for older Aquarians to retire. Now her discoveries in genetic engineering were helping to restore damaged ecosystems across the galaxy, and her species had never been more proud or productive. The hive cluster collective consciousness had evolved in ways that amazed even their human partners. By integrating with Alliance computer networks, they had created a hybrid intelligence that could solve problems no single mind could comprehend. Individual insects retained their personalities, while contributing to calculations that spanned entire star systems. The result was a form of distributed thinking that was revolutionizing science, engineering, and even art. Captain Young Ho, now an Alliance admiral, commanding exploration fleets of over 1,000 ships, reflected on the incredible transformation as he watched construction begin on the first Alliance megastructure, a ring habitat around a yellow star that would house billions of beings from dozens of different species. "They exiled us, thinking they were removing a threat to their established order," he told his mixed species crew. "Instead, they freed us to build something better than their order ever could have been." The human empire that emerged from exile was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not built on conquest or domination, but on the simple, revolutionary idea that every species deserved the chance to reach their full potential. When humans offered partnership instead of submission and cooperation instead of hierarchy, the response was overwhelming. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working together on projects that benefited everyone. Dr. Kyung-mi, now in her 70s, but still brilliant, had become something like a legend throughout Alliance space. Her laboratories produced breakthrough after breakthrough in medicine, physics, and engineering. But her greatest achievement was creating the Alliance Science Academy, where young beings from hundreds of species learned to think beyond the limitations their cultures had imposed on them. The Academy motto was, simple in its profundity, every mind has infinite potential when freed from artificial constraints. The old Galactic Council officially disbanded on a cold morning when Chancellor Vextar signed the final documents transferring all remaining council assets to the Alliance. The ceremony was brief and without celebration. President Nari accepted the transfer with grace and immediately announced that former council species would be welcomed as equals in the new system, provided they embraced Alliance principles of cooperation and mutual respect. The speed of integration amazed everyone involved. Former council worlds that had been economic disasters became prosperous within months, as Alliance trade networks and technology were implemented. Species that had been bitter enemies for generations found themselves collaborating on massive projects like terraforming dead worlds and building interstellar transportation networks. The key was the Alliance approach of focusing on what each species did best rather than trying to make everyone identical. As Admiral Taijun stood in his flagship bridge looking out at the construction of New Geneva Station, the largest space habitat ever attempted, he marveled at how completely the galaxy had changed. The station was being built by teams that included human engineers, Saurian biological specialists, hive cluster mathematical coordinators, and dozens of other species, each contributing their unique abilities to create something none of them could have achieved alone. The Terran Alliance now controlled over 800 star systems and was growing every day. But more importantly, it had proven that cooperation was not just morally superior to domination, but practically more effective. The Alliance economy was booming because trade was based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Alliance science was advancing rapidly because researchers shared knowledge freely rather than hoarding secrets. Alliance military was nearly invincible because every species fought to protect a system that valued them rather than used them. President Nari's final speech as Supreme Chancellor was broadcast throughout the known galaxy. "We were exiled from a galaxy that feared change," she said with the wisdom of someone who had lived through an incredible transformation. "We returned to offer that galaxy something it never had before, the chance to become everything it was meant to be. The empire of the exiled had become the hope of the free, and the galaxy would never be the same again." The first sign that humanity had returned came when the Council Frontier Monitoring Station at Proxima Relay simply disappeared from all sensor networks. Captain Boram stood on the bridge of her stealth destroyer Shadowhawk, watching her crew finish their careful dismantling of the station advanced surveillance equipment. No distress signals were sent, and all personnel were safely transported to Alliance territory, where they would be treated as refugees rather than prisoners. President Nari now ruled the Terran Alliance from the beautiful capital world of New Terra, addressed the Galactic Council through a subspace transmission that sent shockwaves throughout Federation space. "You exiled us 7 years ago believing we would fade into the darkness and slowly die," she said with calm dignity. "Instead, you gave us the greatest gift imaginable, freedom from your restrictions and bureaucratic limitations. We return today not as the defeated refugees you cast out, but as leaders of an alliance that spans over 500 star systems and includes dozens of species who have chosen cooperation over domination." The proof of humanity transformation became terrifyingly clear when the first Terran Alliance battle fleets entered. What had once been Federation Space Council military commanders were horrified to discover that human technology had not only caught up with their own, but had surpassed it in every category that mattered. Alliance ships moved faster through hyperspace, hit harder with their weapons, and could repair battle damage that would completely cripple Council vessels. The elegant Council cruisers that had once seemed so advanced now looked like ancient relics compared to the sleek, deadly Alliance warships. General Yonsu led the liberation of Kepler Prime, humanity first colony world that had been occupied by arachnid forces immediately after the exile. The battle lasted less than 6 hours, which shocked everyone who witnessed it. Alliance bioships released. Clouds of microscopic machines that disabled all arachnid electronics, while human marines in advanced powered armor stormed through defensive positions with overwhelming firepower. The arachnid garrison surrendered when they realized their weapons could not penetrate Alliance armor, and their communications were completely blocked by Alliance jamming technology. But what truly terrified the Council leadership was not the military defeat, but how quickly their own member species began switching sides. The amphibious Aquarian republics had been treated as second-class citizens for centuries, forced to provide valuable resources while receiving minimal representation in Council decisions. When Alliance diplomats offered them full membership, with equal voting rights and access to advanced terraforming technology, the entire Aquarian species voted to join the Alliance within 2 weeks. The crystalline quartz beings who had strongly supported humanity, Exiled, found their carefully controlled trading networks collapsing as Alliance merchants offered better prices, faster delivery, and more reliable service. Their rigid economy began crumbling when independent quartz settlements started requesting Alliance protection and membership. The Quartz leadership tried to maintain control, but their people had tasted freedom and refused to go back to the old oppressive system. Even some of the gaseous nebula entities, despite their completely different form of existence, discovered that Alliance technology could provide them with new ways of living and expanding that they had never imagined possible. Alliance scientists had developed containment systems that allowed nebula beings to explore solid worlds and interact with other species in ways that had been impossible before. This breakthrough led to a philosophical revolution among the nebula people, who began questioning why they had supported the Exiled in the first place. The defections created a cascade effect that spread throughout. Council space species that had been loyal to the Federation for centuries began openly discussing the benefits of Alliance membership when they saw the Aquarians and others prospering under the new system, while their own worlds stagnated under Council bureaucracy. The choice became obvious. The Alliance offered opportunity, growth, and respect, while the Council offered only endless committees and declining influence. Council Chancellor Vexitar called emergency sessions almost daily as crisis. Reports flooded in from across their shrinking territory. Entire star systems were declaring independence. Military fleets were requesting permission to surrender rather than fight hopeless battles against superior Alliance forces. Even the most loyal Council species were beginning to question the wisdom of their leadership and wondering if they had made a terrible mistake years earlier. The speed of the Council collapse amazed even Alliance leaders who had expected a longer, more difficult campaign. Admiral Taijun reported that Council military resistance was crumbling faster than Alliance forces could advance. Many Council worlds surrendered without fighting, when they realized that Alliance occupation meant better living conditions, advanced technology, and inclusion in a growing galactic civilization rather than exploitation and oppression. Captain Young Ho, now commanding a fleet of exploration vessels, was tasked with making contact with Council worlds that wanted to switch sides. His ships were welcomed as liberators rather than conquerors. Population centers that had suffered under Council mismanagement were transformed within months as Alliance engineers built modern infrastructure. Alliance doctors provided advanced medical care, and Alliance educators established schools that taught real science instead of Council propaganda. The most dramatic moment came when the Saurian clans, who had been humanity's first allies in exile, returned to their ancestral worlds that had been taken over by Council forces. The Saurian bioships simply grew through the Council orbital defenses, like plants breaking through concrete. The defending Council fleets found their weapons useless against living ships that absorbed energy attacks and healed from physical damage within minutes. Dr. Kyungmi Genesis Project was accelerated to help integrate the flood of new Alliance members. Worlds that had been strip-mined by Council corporations were restored to garden planet status within months. Dead systems were brought back to life with artificial suns and carefully designed ecosystems. The contrast between Alliance restoration and Council exploitation became a powerful symbol that convinced even more species to abandon the old system. The final blow to Council authority came when their own core worlds began experiencing internal rebellions. Citizens who had grown up believing in Council superiority were confronted with undeniable evidence that they had been living under an inferior system for their entire lives. Young people especially embraced Alliance ideals of equality, opportunity, and scientific progress. The older generation that had supported the exile found themselves increasingly isolated and powerless as Alliance forces approached the Council capital system. Chancellor Vex Tar made one last desperate attempt to negotiate. He offered to return all former human territories and provide massive reparations in exchange for peace. But President Nari's response was simple and final. The time for negotiation ended when you chose exile over cooperation. We are not here to make deals with a failed system. We are here to offer something better to everyone who wants it. The reckoning that the Council had brought upon themselves was now complete. The exile that was supposed to eliminate the human threat had instead created an enemy far more dangerous and appealing than they had ever imagined. The old galaxy was ending and a new one was about to begin.